Goldeneye 007 is an all-time classic. Even if you've never played it before, you're probably aware of its cult status, and that's because back then, it was a pretty big deal. The game originally released for the Nintendo 64 in 1997 and was, I believe, the third best-selling game for that console. PC players already had the original Doom and then got the likes of Quake and Unreal Tournament around the same time that Goldeneye landed on the N64. This is important because console players didn't really have access to quality first-person shooters, partly due to the power of home consoles and the lack of analog sticks on almost every controller at the time. Goldeneye was pretty much a turning point for FPS games on consoles and, as the name suggests, it was tied into the release of Pierce Brosnan's first outing as the immortal James Bond. Now, after many years of speculation and disappointment, the legend has returned on Xbox and Nintendo Switch. Sort of. In my opinion, this release isn't exactly the heroic comeback it was meant to be. It's not the worst thing in the world, but at the end of the day, it's nothing more than a simple upscaled port, and sadly, the emulation quality leaves a lot to be desired. There's no doubt that this game is playable, it is, but I think it deserved far more care and attention than it actually received. So what is Goldeneye 007? Well, it's actually a very basic first-person shooter from the late 90s, and back then, it was exclusive to the Nintendo 64. It features a level-based story mode that follows the events of the film and multiple difficulty settings that add extra objectives to the missions. The original game included 4-player split-screen multiplayer, and the Xbox re-release is no different. Unfortunately, the Xbox version does not include any online functionality, but the Nintendo Switch version does if that's something you're looking for. Being such an old game, there really isn't that much more to it, except for an old-school cheat menu. Completing certain missions in a set time on a specific difficulty will unlock a variety of cheats that you can enable or disable from the main menu. I won't go into all of them, but just to give you an idea, I'll show you this one here, which is called DK mode. It gives all of the characters in the game huge heads and arms so that they resemble Donkey Kong. Funnily enough, this does actually increase the size of the hitboxes for the enemy character models, so headshots are far easier with this mode enabled. When you first start playing the game, you'll only have one mission to select, but as you proceed, you'll unlock more which you can go back to at any time. Simply select the mission, then the difficulty level, and away you go. You'll be able to choose from Agent, Secret Agent, 00 Agent, and 007 difficulties, and each one tasks you with more objectives to complete during each level. A lot of these objectives are easy to fail accidentally. You might need to hack a computer only to have it get blown up during a firefight, meaning that you'll need to restart and try again. Not only that, but there's less ammo and a larger number of enemies to deal with that can take more damage and inflict more damage than normal. Gameplay-wise, you'll be exploring the small levels and looking for your objectives while taking out a lot of guards using the game's various weapons and gadgets. Unsurprisingly, you'll be able to use James Bond's iconic pistol, the PP7, which is actually a sort of movie variant of the famous Walther PPK. As far as I'm aware, there isn't actually a real-life PP7, although I'm from the UK and really don't have much knowledge on firearms, so please do correct me if I'm wrong on that. Perhaps it was just called PP7 in the game due to a sort of copyright issue or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but whatever the case, you can use it in-game with a silencer, as well as a decent selection of other weapons depending on the level that you're playing. There's sniper rifles, assault rifles, other pistols, and you can dual-wield a few of them as well. You should also be able to find some body armor laying around which makes you more durable, although it's very scarce on the higher difficulty settings. The controls on the Xbox Series X version seem to have been updated and improved to feel much more like a modern-day shooter, although I hear the same isn't true for the Nintendo Switch version. There's also a few video options on the Series X for you to mess around with, such as widescreen 16:9 or the original aspect ratio of 4:3, which is what I used after realizing it was a thing. In terms of performance on the Series X, it's virtually locked to 30 FPS at 4K resolution. However, some slowdown is noticeable here and there, but it doesn't seem to affect the actual frame rate. It feels more like your character is suddenly walking through mud or something. It is very strange, but it's not actually that common. Unfortunately, I did notice a lot of visual glitches and bugs that were pretty common, and they make the game feel much worse than it really should. Now, I honestly don't remember if any or all of these problems were present in the original N64 version because frankly, it's been more than 20 years since I last played it. That said, it does beg the question, why didn't they do more to get this game perfect? I mean, you guys know about the cancelled remake that leaked a while back. The one that had everything rebuilt from the ground up and ran at 60 FPS? Yeah, that one. This isn't that, not by a long shot. This version has problems with textures flickering and clipping, AI acting strangely and walking through walls, parts of the geometry not lining up properly, and some very off-putting wobbling effects in various places. I normally leave personal opinions for the next section, but while this port is playable, it's not really worth going back to despite the nice nostalgia. You'd probably be better off just maybe watching the movie or something, but luckily you can play this game as part of Game Pass if you're a subscriber. If you don't happen to be a Game Pass subscriber, then I hate to say it, but I do not think this is worth your time. Okay, so you can probably already guess what I think of this particular release. It's just so, I don't know, disappointing, I guess, more so after waiting all this time. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the original, but this isn't going to hold up to modern day standards, especially with younger players who've never had any experience with this game. I feel like it's going to tarnish the game's reputation and do it a bit of a disservice. A lot of people have heard great things about this classic game, and now that they finally have a chance to try it out on modern systems, it's not going to stand up to their scrutiny. You see, I'm a James Bond fan from way back in the day. I had all of the movies on VHS as a kid, and if any of you say you don't know what a VHS is, then I have officially become an old man. That aside, I love all the Bonds except for Daniel Craig. I personally can't stand him as Bond, and I didn't like any of his films. I know a lot of people do, and that's cool, you know, I don't have a problem with that, but he's just never felt like Bond to me personally. My all-time favourite Bond film has always been Goldeneye, closely followed by Tomorrow Never Dies, and obviously that means that Pierce Brosnan was my actor of choice for the role. Again, don't get me wrong, I like all of them except for Daniel Craig, but having the Goldeneye 007 game around to accompany the movie meant a lot to me when I was younger. I suppose it goes without saying that a huge part of Goldeneye's appeal is the nostalgia. It's remembering the feeling of being there for its original release and playing deathmatch with your friends. I understand that the Xbox Live remake was cancelled, but I feel like they should have just gone ahead and produced a new, full-on remake, or just maybe not bothered at all. Now, I'm not a fan of the Metroid series, but just look at the recent remaster of the first Metroid Prime game. It had a lot of work put into it to modernize virtually every part of it. Higher detailed models, better textures, improved lighting, etc, etc. Even if Goldeneye didn't get a full ground-up remake, they could have improved the textures or tried to iron out the visual problems, but nope, they basically just emulated it, upscaled it, and it hasn't really worked out very well in my opinion. On the Series X, it does at least control well, and the music is brilliant, as it always was. The gameplay does feel pretty much intact, so I suppose things could be worse. I always knew that this was going to be a short review, and at this point there really isn't much else to say that hasn't already been said. So I suppose I am grateful to be able to play it again after all these years. But this low effort, low quality port really does fall so far short of what it truly deserves. In my opinion, Goldeneye 007 on Series X is a bit of a waste of time. I personally don't understand why they would release a port of the game that feels worse than the original instead of just making it the best it could possibly be. As I said before, it is playable, but honestly, why bother? I don't really know how to properly describe it other than to say it's technically a playable video game. To be fair, it's not all bad. The 30 FPS is nice considering that the N64 version can fall as low as 9 or 10 FPS in places. Plus, I will admit 4K resolution is also a nice addition. Ultimately, I think fans who played the original might be able to get some nostalgic enjoyment from this modern re-release, and you know, you can actually play through the entire game here. I mean, it's not like it's broken and doesn't work or anything like that. At the end of the day, it's an okay trip down memory lane, so if you can play it as part of your Game Pass subscription, then maybe give it a go if you want to. But frankly, I simply don't recommend it. If you enjoyed this particular video, I hope you'll consider subscribing for more. Don't worry, subscribing is completely free, but it really helps to grow the channel. If you'd like to help support what I do, then please check out the first link in the video description down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.